Hey guys, Rich Alvarez here,
And Chris Muller.
and we have another exciting top 10 list. Twilight Princess. So Twilight Princess came out in 2006 for the Wii and the GameCube.
And they even did an HD release of Twilight Princess on the Wii U in 2016.
I like the big maps, I like the tone, I like Wolf Link, but unlike a lot of people, I do not like Midna.
I personally didn't have any problems with Midna. I really like the tone. I thought the artwork for the game, if you look at some of the stylized art they released, is Zelda at its best. It looks like the visual continuation of Ocarina of Time. The only thing that I didn't like with the game was when it first came out, the Wii motion controls were a little bit hard for me to get into. Now, they did have a GameCube version, so you didn't have to play that way, but my first experience with the game was with the Wiimotes, and I remember wishing I could just play it on a regular controller.
Twilight Princess is a good game with a lot of good dungeons and a lot of cool maps and a lot of great and juicy design. Unfortunately, it falls just a little flat for me personally in the story department. It does have a pretty decent story, but it's not quite as good as some other games on this list.
I have to say, one of my favorite memories of Twilight Princess was the audience reveal trailer.
A Link Between Worlds. A Link Between Worlds was released on the Nintendo 3DS in 2013. It is the spiritual successor / sequel to A Link to the Past, which is one of my favorite Zelda games.
One of the things I really like about this game is the very clever visuals. There are parts of this game where you go from 3D to 2D, and I thought that that was, very clever on Nintendo's part. In fact, there were similar things that Nintendo ended up doing again in Super Mario Odyssey years later. But this is a fun game. If you have a 3DS, it's definitely one of the top games on that handheld console, so would definitely recommend you pick it up.
Link's Awakening. Originally released on the Game Boy in 1993, it was remade for the Switch in 2019. This is one of the best Zelda games because it is so cool.
If you didn't pick this game up on the Game Boy since it was released such a long time ago, this is a top game to get for the Nintendo Switch. There's a certain style, it's called the clay diorama aesthetic. Oh my goodness, this game looks beautiful. They do this thing where they pop the depth of field, where the background is just beautifully blurred out, and I gotta say, one of the most enjoyable games.
So you might be asking yourself, well, what is number 8? Is it the original Link's Awakening, or is it the remake? The answer is, it's either one, because Link's Awakening on the Switch is essentially the same game, with better graphics. Skyward Sword. So I'm a huge fan of Studio Ghibli, especially Castle in the Sky. In fact, I'm just a huge fan of anything that happens in the sky, and this game was that.
One of the things I really liked about Skyward Sword was the unique relationship between Link and Zelda. I think in a lot of games, sometimes Zelda is just very much a background character in her own Zelda game. They grew up together in this game. So I would say just the character development was something I thought was unique that this game brought to the Zelda series.
Wind Waker. Released on the GameCube in 2002, Wind Waker came as a little bit of a surprise for, well, one very giant reason. Chris?
The cell shading was a very polarizing choice. The game itself is very fun. The sailing was great for exploration. I remember going into this game a little bit skeptical, but really enjoying how it added a new dynamic to the Zelda series. Sailing all across the sea, looking for those hidden islands was a very enjoyable experience.
Majora's Mask. Ooh, when you talk about dark tone, this game is dark tone turned into a game.
We love this game. If Ocarina of Time was epic, Majora's Mask was dark. And one of the things I remember was the really heavy themes of loss and redemption. You interacted with these characters, these Goron characters, these Zora characters, where they have traumatic pasts that are full of loss and unfinished personal business with their relationships. And you basically go and you interact with their loved ones and help heal some of those wounds. I remember this game made me tear up when I was a kid, and I gotta hand it to Nintendo. I loved that they dared to really push the envelope on how much of an emotional impact they would have in a Zelda game.
The Legend of Zelda. Yep, the original game here at number 4, released in 1986 for the NES or Famicom if you are in Japan, and it was an exciting open world. You could do the game in any order.
The music was amazing, and one of my personal favorite things about this game is how much hidden bonus areas there are in hidden rooms. Nintendo Power even had a contest where one of the winners of Nintendo Power got his own secret room, which was pretty cool that they would do that, and it's still in the game to this day if you go back and play it.
It's dangerous to go alone, but take my word for it, play this game.
And this concept of an open world, complete the game in any order if you want, would not be revisited in a Zelda game for a very long time, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Okay, before we get to our top 3, here are some honorable mentions. Oracle of Ages and Seasons,
Phantom Hourglass,
Hyrule Warriors,
Cadence of Hyrule,
Four Swords Adventures,
and I gotta say, 4 players on the Game Boy Advance was very fun.
We also have to mention the worst Zelda games, including Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link.
But Rich, what about CDI Zelda?
Those aren't Zelda games. Link to the Past. Released on the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom in 1991, A Link to the Past would set the template for all Zelda games afterwards. Number 1 was an open world sandbox game. Number 2 doesn't really count, but was a side-scroller. This is what Zelda games would be for decades, until Breath of the Wild. It also introduced all of the famous music in the series that the original didn't, like Zelda's Lullaby.
The music is very iconic.
Ocarina of Time. Released for the Nintendo 64 in 1998, Nintendo took that old Mario 64 engine and completely changed it so they could make Ocarina of Time.
When I look back at the Zelda games I have sunk the most time into in my entire history as a gamer, Ocarina of Time is gonna be the one that I played the most. This game was so epic. It took the hero's journey, the idea of a young boy leaving home and going on an adventure, and perfected it in 3D gameplay. The music, the characters, the open world, the little mini games, the fishing, the lore. Somehow, this game ended up being amazing, and I gotta say, guys, it was very, very, very hard for us to not put this number 1, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Once again, as to be expected from a Zelda game, incredible music. They added a couple more iconic themes to the series, including Song of Storms, and of course that incredible title sequence. Overall, Ocarina of Time, not only one of the best Zelda games, one of the best games ever made, an incredible journey. It is immaculate. Breath of the Wild. Now, it is extremely unusual for me to pick the newest of anything as the number 1 in one of these lists, because generally speaking, I need more time to absorb something to really think about how good it was. But that's not the case for Breath of the Wild, which was released on the Nintendo Switch in 2017, because I knew pretty much right away that this was my favorite Zelda game, and that is just crazy to think about, because I have so many fond memories of Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past. I didn't think anything was ever going to top those in my mind until Breath of the Wild showed up, and it is incredible. Here we have Link on his way to defeat Ganon in any order. It brings back the open world sandbox nature of the original Legend of Zelda game, but combines that with modern day sandbox open world mechanics that you can find in games like Skyrim or New Vegas. And the combination of those elements with a Zelda game blows my mind, and still blows my mind. Breath of the Wild.
I 100% agree with Rich. I feel like Ocarina of Time is a perfect 3D Zelda game, but Breath of the Wild is an even more perfect 3D Zelda game. I think that introducing the weapon durability was a great idea because it encouraged you to explore and find new weapons to use. It was a little bit of a change of pace in that there were only 4 major dungeons, which I guess was really divine beasts that took the place of dungeons, and instead there were hundreds of shrines. But this game was so fun, collecting all of the different pieces of equipment. You could go and you could fight Ganon right at the beginning of the game if you didn't want to complete the game in you know, the standard 4 dungeon order. This game is amazing. The reason why Breath of the Wild is higher on this list than Ocarina of Time is because it takes everything that we loved about a Zelda game, like Ocarina of Time, goes back to the roots with the open world exploration, where you can complete the game in any order, and adds some of the sandboxy crafting from popular games like Skyrim to result in the perfect Zelda game.
To me, Ocarina of Time still has the better story, but Breath of the Wild definitely has the best gameplay of any Zelda game, so that's why it takes the number 1 spot. Well guys, what did you think of our top 10 list? Are we super dumb?
Would you change the order and put something in a different spot? Should Ocarina of Time really been number 1 instead of Breath of the Wild? We don't know, but you should let us know by leaving a comment below.
Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Majoras channel and hit that bell to stay notified. That is so important. Alright everyone, have a wonderful day.
And an even more pleasant tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye!